The U.S. State of Secretary Antony Blinken arrived in Mexico on Wednesday in a bid to control the surging migration. Blinken held talks with the Mexican president, and as growing migration causes chaos on their shared border, the high-level talks tabled as the 2024 presidential polls loom over the U.S. President Joe Biden's head. Wednesday's meeting was followed by a phone call between the two presidents over the need to address border security, and the trip comes as the Republican Party has called on President Joe Biden to crack down on the migration numbers. Now, the Republicans have made the demand a prerequisite to vote in favor of one of the key priorities of the Biden administration, which is to provide aid and support to Ukraine. Now, the meeting comes as a fresh wave of up to 15,000 migrants is set to hit base in the already brimming U.S.-Mexico border. A caravan of about 8,000 asylum seekers, mostly from Cuba and Haiti, are on the move towards the borders. And separately, in the past week, over 10,000 people crossed over the borders every day. Now, while the Mexican president has agreed to reduce the scores of people who cross over from Mexico, he pressed for understanding the root cause of migration, and he's asked the U.S. to give financial aid to the lagging Latin American nations where people are forced to flee to look out for better opportunities. The president also spoke about the removal of restrictive U.S. sanctions from the governments of Cuba and Venezuela in order to help the countries prosper. Now, during his address, President Obrador also warned the issue of migration can alter the U.S. politics. And U.S. presidential poll runners like Donald Trump have trumpeted a severe crackdown on migrants if brought back to power. Now, the aim of containment at the borders comes as record numbers of migrants continue to cross into the U.S. Both in 2022 and 2023, over 2 million people have been apprehended while trying to cross the southern borders. And the Biden administration in the U.S. is facing a tough backlash over the increasing numbers, despite efforts to curb them. For more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sends us this report. Listen in.
The meeting between U.S. officials and the Mexican president come at a critical time for the Biden administration. Illegal crossings are at an all-time high, and Border Patrol say that they arrest upward of 10,000 people on some days. Also, a caravan of asylum seekers started heading towards the United States from southern Mexico during the weekend. About 5,000 people are said to be in that caravan. The United States hopes that Mexico could help on a number of issues. On the one hand, it wants to see more enforcement on Mexico's southern border with Guatemala. On the other hand, the United States has been trying to convince Mexico for months to have asylum seekers remain in Mexico until the State Department processes these refugees' papers. It may take months, even longer, for that to happen. So far, Mexico has declined doing this. For the most part, the Mexican president has signaled that the border issue is an American problem, and if it does ultimately want to help the United States further in this crisis, it hopes that the United States would lift sanctions against Cuba and Venezuela.